Welcome to the Color of Influence podcast, where you will hear conversations from influential people of color from around the world, from social media, and right here in your communities. These behind-the-scenes conversations will motivate you, inspire you, and encourage you. I am your host, Aisha Morgan, and let's meet today's guest. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Gina Paige, who is the co-founder of African Ancestry. And if you guys are not aware of what this is, they help you find your African roots using your DNA. So kind of like some of those other sites that are out there, but it is specific to helping you find your African roots. Dr. Paige has helped Oprah, John Legend, Chadwick Boseman, Spike Lee, Condoleezza Rice, just to name a few people. And today she's going to be giving us all the information about African ancestry. So let's get into my conversation with Dr. Paige. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We are here with Dr. Gina Paige, and I recently discovered African Ancestry through Facebook. Someone posted about it, and I was super excited to find out more about it. Recently, I did a 23andMe, and I also did Ancestry. So now I'm going to dive even deeper and do the African Ancestry to really find out about where my family is from. So I want Dr. Paige to just go ahead and introduce herself, and then we're going to find out all about African Ancestry.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm Gina Paige. I'm the president and co-founder of AfricanAncestry.com. And we're the pioneers of genetic ancestry tracing for Black people around the world. We've been doing this work for almost 20 years now. So before any of the companies that you've taken tests with were even a thought, we were in the marketplace filling the void for Black folks in terms of our identities and our connection to the continent.
I love that. How did you get started?
Well, African Ancestry really was started by the community. My business partner, Dr. Rick Kittles, is a geneticist, and he had been doing research while he was at Howard University at the National Genome Center. And he was part of a team that went to New York City to research at an unearthed cemetery of enslaved Africans. And when the community found out that he was able to identify the ancestry of those bones, he was inundated with requests to do it for them. And so he and I partnered, and I've commercialized his research to make it available to everyone.
I love that. So once you get someone's DNA, what is the process to find out where they're from?
Well, so the process is pretty straightforward. We can trace maternal lineages, and we can also trace paternal lineages. So once we receive someone's DNA, they've already decided which branch of their family tree they want to trace. And so our lab sequences the DNA. So they extract the DNA from the swab. It's just a cheek swab. And then they sequence it or determine the code of either their mitochondrial DNA or their Y chromosome, and then provide us with that code, which is like a genetic fingerprint. AfricanAncestry.com has the largest database of African DNA codes or genetic fingerprints. And so when we find matches within our data set, those are people with whom you share a common genetic ancestry. And so we're able to pinpoint African ancestry to a present day country and an ethnic group. Okay.
So how does that database start? Like, where do you get this information? Did you have to go to Africa to find all this stuff out? Because I believe the person that I first saw it on, his name is Toby, and he is a rapper here in the Houston area. But he knew the tribe of where his family was from.
Well, his you're talking about the performer.
Yeah.
Yeah, his parents were born in Nigeria.
Okay, got it. Okay.
So yeah, so he knew because he was born, he was born into it.
Yeah.
His connection to Africa is not 400 to 500 years old, like
got
ours.
it. Okay.
Yeah.
But the tribe that he knew, it wasn't, I believe it was him. It could have been somebody else. But wherever it wasn't where they originated, where they originally thought they started, if that makes sense.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure about
Yeah, we don't have to talk about him, but like, how do you?
So for example, so we have the largest database of African lineages, and our database contains genetic information from Africans in almost 40 present day countries.
Okay.
And hundreds of African ethnic groups. And
okay.
so because we have such a large collection of data, we're able to pinpoint ancestry down to the tribe. So for people like Chadwick Boseman, we traced his mother's line to the Limba people living in Sierra Leone today, or someone like Taraji P. Henson, we've traced her mother's line to the Massa people living in Cameroon today. So that's how specific we can get when the ancestry is African. But the results aren't always African, because none of us who are the descendants of enslaved people are 100% African.
Right, which is very true. Not by our doing, but
you're exactly.
So does your database start from the co-founders research, or
I'm sorry, I went off on a different tangent. So Dr. Kittles collaborated with researchers across the continent.
Okay.
He did some firsthand data collection himself, and then there's also data in our database that comes from the public domain. So that's how the data has been compiled.
Okay. So once someone gets all of their results back, have you ever coordinated trips for them to go visit where they're from, or is this more of just, here we're telling you what you are and where your family is from, and then the rest is up to you?
Well, the rest is up to you. However, we do have African Ancestry family reunions, and those are specially curated, culturally immersive birthright journeys home for people who've taken our test. So we've traveled to the country of Sierra Leone 3 times so far since April 2021, for people to learn about their Mende ancestry, their Temini ancestry, or their Limba ancestry, and the people and the place that is called Sierra Leone today. Those travelers also have gotten citizenship, because Sierra Leone is the first and only country to offer citizenship to Africans in the diaspora who can prove they have either maternal or paternal connection to that country. So we've gone to Sierra Leone 3 times. We're going again in November. And then this week, we actually launched our Ghana African Ancestry family reunion. So we'll be traveling with people whose ancestry we've traced to the Akan people, the Ashanti people, the Ewe people, the Ga people. And we'll be traveling throughout several different parts of Ghana to experience those cultures.
That's amazing.
And then in March, we have an African Ancestry family reunion to Cameroon.
Okay. Now, when I did mine, and this could be not 100% accurate, but the majority of my DNA comes from Nigeria. So are y'all planning a trip to anywhere in Nigeria, or?
So we don't have a Nigeria on our list yet, but our trips are for African Ancestry family members. So for those who've chosen to trace their ancestry with other companies, y'all can't come on.
Well, no. So I'm doing my tests,
Oh
But
yeah,
that's
so
why I
once
said
you
it
take,
could
so now
be,
you're family. Okay,
yeah, so it could be that it's not as accurate. That's what I'm saying. Like the test I did previous may not be 100% accurate.
So those tests are completely different. The tests you've taken are completely different than our tests in
Okay.
several ways. Um, the first way they're different is that they weren't designed to help Black people reconnect to the continent.
Okay.
Those tests were designed to collect the genetic data from test takers, and to provide family relationships, to provide health traits, and then to give you an overall bird's eye view of your ancestry.
Okay.
And so they don't look at specific branches of the tree. What they do is they look at the entire genetic family tree and then tell you what percentage comes from Africa, what percentage comes from Europe, other countries. And then within Africa, they've divided Africa up into regions. And then they say within your African percentage, some percentage comes from this region, some percentage comes from that region. You don't know what all is included in the region. Exactly. You don't know the ethnic groups. You don't know which branches of your tree are from whatever region they're saying. You can't share those results with anyone except siblings with whom you share both parents.
Right.
And their database of African lineages is fewer than 3,000 samples. Oh, so wow. They're comparing you to 3,000 Africans and then giving you this macro look that in effect says that you're you're 75 on average, 75% West African. Right. And we don't need DNA to tell us that. Our history books tell us that. We know that we're from West Africa. So that when it comes to African ancestry, it's not as informative. The other thing that they do is they keep your DNA, they monetize it through research and selling of information. At African Ancestry, our database is 11 times larger. So we're not segmenting the continent by regions. Right. We're segmenting the continent by present day country delineations, which is still white folks deciding, what's what, but whatever, that's the present day situation, and ethnic groups. So we're able to be more specific about which people you match to. The other thing is, like I said, we're not looking at your entire genetic family tree. Right. We're only looking at one branch of the tree using DNA that has been inherited unchanged generation after generation after generation. So when you take our matriclan test, because you're a woman, biological woman, the DNA that we look at is mitochondrial DNA. You and your siblings have the exact same mitochondrial DNA as your mother. And she and her brothers and sisters got it from your grandmother. And she got it from her mother and her mother and her mother. It doesn't change. Okay. When you have children, you'll pass it to them. Your daughters will pass it to their children. So with one test, you'll be able to have an informative record for an entire lineage of people that's very specific. So that's the difference. And then we don't sell or share our customers' DNA. Right. In fact, our lab destroys it. So there is no way for us to sell or share it and monetize it on the back end. And that is because probably the biggest difference between us and the others is that we are Black people who have created this test for Black people. Right. We aren't doing this to make money. I mean, we're a business, and yes, we want to be profitable, but our mission is to help Black people transform the way we view ourselves and the way we view Africa. Yeah. And that's why we exist. So we have a very different mission, purpose, and set of values than the other companies, which leads to a very different test. Right.
So as a woman, should I do my maternal and not paternal?
Well, as a woman, you can only do your maternal because paternal ancestry, we use what's called the Y chromosome. And all of us remember from high school biology that men have Y chromosomes, women do not. That's the chromosome that determines maleness. It's also the chromosome that codes for leaving the toilet seat up, right? So that's how you keep it straight. We don't have those. So when we want to know our paternal ancestry, father to father to father to father, then we need someone in the family with that Y chromosome. So it could be your brother, your father, your uncle, your grandfather, your uncle's son. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Any of those men can get that answer.
Got it. Okay. So once you get the results, is there like a database where you can connect to people who share the same genetic makeup as you, or are from the same tribe, or
so the way that we make those connections is through the African Ancestry online community.
Okay.
Because of our commitment to confidentiality, we don't what's the word I'm looking for? We don't keep a customer database.
Got it. Okay.
So with the other companies, they've kept everyone's data. And so you can find cousins, fifth and sixth cousins. You can't do that with our test. But in the African Ancestry online community, people are making all sorts of connections with sharing information and resources with one another.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I know some people that have gotten trouble from Ancestry.com in particular because of that reason. Because they keep that database and like, you might not know who your parent, one of your parents are, or a sibling that you didn't know you had.
It's interesting because technology has advanced to the point where we can use it for so many things, right? And it is extremely helpful when people are looking for relatives, when people are looking for a parent or looking for any kind of relative. So many people are adopted. So many people have been estranged from families, all sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
So it's a blessing that technology allows us to make those kinds of connections. However, the average person isn't clear, I think, in my opinion, the average person isn't clear about why they're taking the test, what they could possibly find, and what's going to happen with their DNA. And so you can get blindsided in so many different ways, right? You can find, we have a colleague who's part of the African Ancestry team, and she's found over 6 siblings.
Wow.
Having used other companies' tests that, she knew she was adopted, and she found she knew her birth parents. She had no idea that she had 6 other siblings out there.
Wow.
So, you just have to be prepared and know that it's possible. So and that's one of the reasons why we haven't ventured into making that type of connection, because there's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, that's
tough. In being the purveyor, or not the purveyor, but the presenter or the provider of that kind of information. It's hard enough to learn where you're from in Africa and try to reconnect to that, or to find out which branch of your tree is not African but is European, and have to deal with that. We don't want the extra pressure of having to help people through those other levels of connection. So if someone's looking to find a relative or looking for a health trait, we're very clear that this is not the test for you. But if, like in your case, you want to know more about your ancestry and you want to explore the traditions and the values and the beliefs and the practices of the people that came before you, whose DNA you still have in your body today, then we certainly are the place that can help you with that.
Yeah. Now, are most of your customers American?
Yes, most of our customers are American, but because we are an e-commerce company, we have had customers from 60 different countries.
Okay.
So anybody can take our test. It's
Yeah.
not exclusive to a race. It's not exclusive to a part of the world. It's just that we're going to provide the most informative information
Right.
for people of African descent. And
Yeah.
we live everywhere.
Okay.
We're all over the world, right?
Yep, sure are. And like, for me, I have a lot of friends. I went to the University of Houston, which is a very diverse college, and everyone kind of knows their origin, right? Everybody has like a culture, and I know I have a lot of Nigerian friends, and just to like, I want to know what that feels like. You know what I mean? Like, not that American, like being a Black American is not a culture, but we don't have like an identity outside of what is perceived to other people.
Listen, we're the original victims of identity theft.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, we don't have an identity that is rooted in where we come from.
Right.
And that's a fundamental part of psychology. Knowing where you're from
Yeah.
is critical to knowing who you are. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I mean, from, for me, like, I obviously, if I would have known that your company existed first, I would have just done that first. But the one test, like you said, was very regional. So I'm like, okay, I know that's where I came from, but where over there am I from? Then the second test like broke it down, but like you said, I don't know if this is my mom's side or my dad's side. Like, where do I kind of fit into this? And I only have a sister, so like a full sister. I have a half brother, and so our results are going to be the same, but they don't go into specifics. Like, this is from your mom's side, this is from your dad's side. It just does a percentage. I know mine because my mom also did one of the tests, so I can kind of compare. But even that, I'm like, wait, like your percentage is not even the same as mine.
Yeah.
So
it's not
I
good
don't.
because hers is a combination of her mother and her father.
Right.
Yours is a combination of her mother, her father, and your father. So
Right.
it's not going to be the same. Yeah.
Exactly. So we were trying to like figure it out, looking at our percentages and our numbers. And so it is very hard to like kind of pinpoint it. But I really, really want to know, where I'm from. Like, we just all have that void of where did our family start from the beginning?
Yeah. And it helps too, because most of us, at least in the United States, are sold a history that says we come from slavery and that we don't have history prior to enslavement. And that is the biggest lie and the detrimental information that you could impress upon somebody, like to tell them that you don't have a history, that you don't have a people, when in fact our history comes from the place where everything started.
Right.
Every culture is a subculture is of ours, of African, which has thousands and thousands of cultures within it, right? So I see what you're doing in terms of saying, no, I want to know specifically where in Africa I come from, as an act of resistance, because this disconnection is intentional. It was masterfully orchestrated so that we would be permanently disconnected from our roots and from our power. And so by saying, no, I'm going to find out where I'm from, I'm going to learn about those people, I'm going to travel to that place, or I'm going to invest in that place, or I'm going to give back to that place, I'm going to return, is an unparalleled act of resistance. That you can't tell us that we can't go back.
Right.
No, we don't accept that. We can go back. And in doing so, we then perform an act of self-love, because there's healing of all this generational trauma that we're experiencing, that we don't even know where it comes from or know that we're experiencing. it's an act of healing. It's an act of reclamation. I mean, there's so much power in the reconnection. So I'm excited for you to take the next step and get the best information.
Exactly.
About at least your maternal line, right? Your mother's people. And that result is based on DNA that is the exact same DNA as the woman who was stolen. You have her exact same DNA. Yes. What does that tell you about resilience and tenacity and courage and resistance and endurance and all of those things that our mothers and our fathers had to experience in order for you and I to be sitting here on this podcast chopping it up, in our lovely homes and on our latest technological gadgets. It's because of those people, and we have that power that runs through every cell of our body.
Yeah. And through social media, I've unlearned a lot, Mm-hmm. I just remember the visual that they wanted us to see of Africa wasn't a place that you wanted to go to in any means, shape, or form. And then, like you said, like you're American, kind of putting that into us that you're American. It's like, no, I'm not. Like,
and you should be satisfied with that. And how dare you
question exactly? Yeah, you're 100% right. And I've been able to see Africa through the lens of social media, through other people, and like you said, like they don't want you to want to go back, so they're not going to show you the images of what it really looks like. They're going to show you the bad part, so you're like, I'm not African. Because I remember as a kid, like seeing those images and thinking like, I'm glad I'm not African, but I am African. Like, as an adult, I know better. But yeah, it's just.
And I don't know how old you are, but I mean, we talk to kids today who think that when you ask them what's the first thing you think of when I say the word Africa, they say children who look like me who are starving. They say people living in huts. They say tigers and elephants. It's not positive.
Right.
Today in 2022.
Yeah. And it's definitely something that I think with us getting more information as Americans about where we're from, we take more ownership, right? Because if you don't know what part of Africa you're from, you don't associate with anything. And that's kind of like my push for, my family to get their test done through African Ancestry, because, you see people who are from Asia and their weddings and how everything is just passed on in their food, and just even people from Nigeria and different parts of Africa, when you go to their ceremonies for anything, it's rooted in where they came from. And then for us, we just do what we've seen. Like, not necessarily that's what we want to do, but it's just what we saw being done. So this is how I'm going to have my wedding, and this is how I'm going to do things for celebrating my kids' birthdays, and like being around so many different cultures and seeing what they do. It's like, I just want that. I want to be able to pass that to my daughter, for her to be like, this is where I'm from. This is where my family is from, and not just stop at America.
Yeah. And the beauty of taking an AfricanAncestry.com test is one test gives you information for so many people in the family. So when you take the test, your kids don't have to do it. Your sister doesn't have to do it. Your mother, your aunts, your cousins, your grandma, nobody else has to do it. Now, to get that information, now you may want to learn about other branches of the tree, and so you'll need other family members for that. But for any one test, you'll be able to go to a family reunion, and you'll be the star of the family reunion. you'll be like, I did this one time. it was a long time ago, maybe like '06, and there was a family who was having a family reunion in DC, and so they had the patriarch take the test, and I don't know, let's just say the last name is pick the last name, Brown.
Okay.
And so I went to the family reunion since it was local, and I presented the results to them, and so I said, everyone whose father is a Brown, stand up. And half the room, more than half the room stood up, because they were celebrating that side of the family.
Right.
So more than half of the room stood up, and I said, you all share paternal ancestry with the Akan people living in Ghana today. Wow. And you just heard this collective, like the whole room at the same time, like, and so from one person taking the test, it could have been the oldest, it was the oldest, but it could have been the youngest, it could have been anyone in between.
Yeah.
All of those people knew their roots.
I love that. And I mean, with you saying that, like my mom's side of the family is very close. And we've been trying to get people to take the other test. But thankfully now I can just do this test and give everybody the information. And, you know, depending on what side that they want to know more information about, they can do it. But I love that. I mean, just to be able to tell your family, you know, this is where we started. This is where we're from. This is our origin. Like, that's amazing. I love that.
There's one thing I want to add too, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Everybody's not going to take a DNA test. Everybody's not going to take our test. And that doesn't mean that you can't still, or that you shouldn't still explore your family history. So I want to encourage people to learn as much about your family history as you can, you know, ask questions, interview the elders. A lot of times people say, well, the older people won't talk about it because it was too painful. But what we've seen is like when a young person asks, the elder is more open talking to the person. We all have phones now. You could just hit record on your phone and record the answers, or, you know, record the story
as they're talking
together at Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever holiday you celebrate. Capture those stories, because all of that contributes to who we are. Even if you can't get all the way back to Africa, and if you can't, pick a country. There's over 50 of them to choose from.
Right.
And learn as much as you can about that country. You know what I mean? There's whatever is interesting to you. If music is interesting to you, then explore the music of that country. If food is interesting to you, if literature is interesting to you, explore the writers of that country. Anything that you're interested in, you can explore that in another country. And I would argue that the best countries to explore that in would be African ones.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, just knowing my friends that are from different regions, they couldn't be more the same and more different.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to, you know, regionally how people lived and things that they've carried along. So I can't wait to get my results.
That's going to be fun.
Yeah. So for anybody that wants to take this test, how can they find you?
You can go to AfricanAncestry.com. We're on IG and Facebook as African Ancestry. We're on YouTube as African Ancestry DNA. We have a lot of content online for people. If you want to know how it works, what do people think when they take the test? What's their post-test experience like? What's an African Ancestry family reunion like? We have that kind of content as well. And so, you can find us pretty much. We're on Twitter too. Only place we aren't, I think, is TikTok. We're not on there yet.
Yeah. TikTok is tough.
A lot of work. A whole lot of work.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but I will say that, like, it's a rabbit hole that is not to be explored. Like, I have a TikTok, but I feel like every time I post something, I get trapped. And then I'm like, put down the phone, don't watch the next video. So I stay away from TikTok because I get too involved in just swiping and watching people's videos.
They figured out the formula.
Oh yeah. When you make it easy for somebody to just get to the next thing, It is. So I try to avoid it.
I understand.
But Dr. Paige, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me this afternoon, giving us all the information that we need to go out and get our test. Like I said, I'm excited to get my test and my results. What you're doing is amazing. I thank you and your partner for engaging in this venture for all of us, because it is for us, and we appreciate you. And I am going to be trying to get everybody I know to get a test, because we need to know where we came from.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for having me and for spreading the word. It really is. We've lasted for 20 years because of word of mouth.
Yeah.
One person tells another person. We don't spend millions of dollars in advertising. We stay in our lane, and we are for us, by us. So I appreciate you as well.
Absolutely. Thank you again. All right. Bye.
Take care.
And that's a wrap on another amazing episode. I know that you were just as inspired as I was after listening to that conversation. And to let us know how we're doing, don't forget to leave us a review, like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also follow us on all social media platforms, from YouTube to Facebook, at The Color of Influence, and on Instagram, _color_of_influence. You can check out all of our episodes and additional content on our website, thecolorofinfluence.com, and that's an N only for influence. And don't forget to share the podcast with someone you know, and have them share the podcast with someone they know. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, peace out.